Yeah, and today I'm going to make a presentation of a work that I developed recently. When I mean recently, I mean from 2012 until now. And yeah, it deals with this relation between historical research and artistic action or artistic research. I will start by sharing some thoughts with you about the history and its relation between these two disciplines. And then I will show you what I did. That is a project that I already completed and another project that is still running, still to be completed. Then from tomorrow we start a workshop that it's related with these topics, I mean the relation with history, but only slightly because it took me 5 years to complete the first project. It's going to take 5 years to complete the second project, so I think it would be a bit silly to pretend that you can make a workshop in 3 days about this. But we will reflect and work together about the meaning of working with memory and working with lost memories, for example, starting from a more individual point of view. In this case, that is in my work, there isn't a personal involvement except for being, almost every, I could say every work of art comes from the experience of everyone, no? Of our experience. So, of course, that was happening to me too. But, yeah, the relation stops here. That is, there isn't any other reason for me to work on that, on those stories that are very old ones, anyway. Okay, but let's start. And the first sentence I want to share with you is a negative sentence. That is that we are not talking about history as a subject of art. I would add, of course, because I think that you understood already from the title, no? When I talk about artistic action, the meaning is not that we are working on historical subjects. So history in this talk and in my work is more a method. That is, I'm more interested in the relation between the processes that those disciplines are developing. The disciplines are history and art, let's say, make art. So we relate these two types of research. First, I want to start with some ideas about history, to say my point of view of about history. That is what I feel that history is. I mean, we come from a past where history should be like a teaching book for the present and for the future. We can still think that it is like that. Of course, it is in a way also like that. But for me, history is more like a game. To make history and to read history it's more like going to another world, keep away other thoughts, and also it's a way to visiting the dead. That is, in our secularized societies where there is no almost place for religion, to read about history or to make history is also going to kind of abstract graves and see who was there. So another question that we could ask to ourselves is what is a subject of history? That is, history is made of battles, is made of treaties, is made of habits of common people 300 years ago. All of this, I mean, the history traditionally was made of those first topics, that is, battles, alliances, treaties of peace, and so on. But then the social history was developed in the 20th century, and therefore we get used to think that history can be also how a countryman in the Middle Age was eating. But apart from that, history makes you to confront with a choice, that is, what is relevant, what I have to save from the past, and what I can forget from the past. So the thing is that the relevancy of the facts is not something that is in the fact themselves. The fact isn't relevant in itself. What matters is the point of view that we take, and what matters is the way we want to tell the story. And what matters in the end is to tell the story. So this is an idea that we can develop also in our workshop, because I would stress that starting from personal experiences doesn't mean that we are working on an autobiographic mood. We can start from our biography by amplifying these facts to have a general meaning, a universal meaning even. So what is important is that relevancy is something relative. So history is also made by acts carried by who wrote that book, let's say, because the output for history is a book, as you know, and who is perceiving these results through the reading of the book. Well, you could, we are talking about a very simple, basic thing, so it's easy to do this, but anyway, you could easily change the words and put artist instead of historian, and visitor, if you mean, instead of reader, and see that we are talking about the same thing. That is a relation between the maker and the one that is, let's say, enjoying what the maker made, which is not a passive relation. That is, the maker has everything is in his hand and passing a message, and the one that is enjoying that message is a passive one. No, it's a process of interpretation that takes place everywhere, including when we read a book or when we visit an exhibition. So the subject or the object, let's say, but what we talk about is not banal in itself. It's our gaze that makes things to be banal or relevant. So banality is an addition to the subject. It's not inside the subject. And it's a mere appearance. Well, I'm not going to. It's not going to take longer, this starting part, but I want to stress something that I really experienced very clearly while making these last works. That is that we are a bit confused by an idea that is the idea that the historical documents, that is the primary sources, are like a deposit of truthness, of things that are true. So if we read a book that give us references, as any scientific book should do, because you know science is to create a path that can be taken on one way and also return back and then take again and find the same way. No, this is science. So history is a science because of sources. Because if I say something, it is because there was something written here, some manuscript there, and I show you my interpretation so that you can have your own interpretation by relying on the same sources. So that's why we have quotations in history book. But when we come across the quotation from original documents, that is not other interpretation, that is books of history, but the documents themselves, we think that they are more true. We will see that it is not really like that, because the primary sources are deceiving, and it is a similar deceivement of the deceivement that we have when we look at photography, let's say in an ingenious way, no? In a naive way. You study art, and therefore you are already used to the concept that photography is an interpretation of reality. No? It's not a document of reality. It can be conceived as a document of reality, of course, as a manuscript is a document, but at the same time is the interpretation of reality by the photographer, conditioned by the means that he was using at that time, and so on. So same thing for the, let's say, original documents or primary sources. That is, these documents that lies in archives, thousands and thousands and millions of pages of handwritten documents that are were made by a particular society with a particular system of power, with a particular way to express this power, and so on. So we have seen another interesting relation between art and history, no? Through this comparison between original documents and photography. So, but coming back to the documents, we have to ask ourselves why it was written, these documents, who was writing it, and also we should try to take into account, it's a bit hard, of course, a bit difficult, that many other texts are not existing anymore because they went destroyed, or has never been written, but there should be another testimony of reality. So what would be history if we had this chorus of voices, different voices, not only the voices of the people that were having the money, basically, no? Because well, you will see in my presentation, we see that there is a very clear example of this, because we will talk about slavery. And in slavery, you have an owner, and you have another human being that is like a thing. So he's not allowed to have his own voice. So what is an act of selling a slave, if not a representation of a power with someone that is on the side of the owner? Let's see, the notary that is writing the public act to sell that person, another buyer, some witnesses that make a signature to witness that this act was made, and so on. And we have a kind of hidden protagonist that is the real subject of that document. It's deleted in a way from reality. So history is something delicate to make, because you have to take into account all this. You can't say, okay, this is what is written, this is true. There are mistakes, there are people that were distracted, there were people that were ending their ink, and they decided to make it shorter because the ink was ending, and so on. About this comparison between art and history, I also find that there is something striking if you think to history, because history is similar to art. I mean, there are artists that are really easygoing. They do their work as if it's a kind of natural fluxus of ideas and forms, and good for them. But for many artists, art is a very long work that takes all life, have some rewards, but only a little number of artists have a monetary reward. Many others, they have symbolical rewards. And if you take the career of a historian and the career of an artist, you see that mainly they have their own, they have a similar output. That is, they work a lot, they make things that nobody else will do exactly at the same way, and they end up not by being rich because they are selling their own work. I mean, if you think to an historian that is spending thousands of hours on manuscripts in archives, and then publish a book that is going to be read by a few hundred people all around the world, mainly other historians. Of course, the output is not going to be a bestseller, no? He's not going to pay his bills with this. So they end up with the teaching. So historians and artists very often pay their bills through the teaching activity, which comes after these results that they had. So it's a very very basic, prosaic discourse, I understand, but this is how it goes. And this work out of convenience I wrote, that is without being paid for that, or without seeing an immediate result, economical result for that. It's also another thing. You can see it on the other side of the medal, of the coin, and that is the freedom, because this capacity to move in unexplored lands without someone committing you to make things means that you are free. So the artifact, and with artifact we could say art, object, but also whatever object, no? Any object, but in that case we are talking about a history book, for example, is symbolic. It's a symbolic reward, the symbolic that is coming through the publishing of a book of history, very often. The only books that are really bestsellers are books written by scholars or writers that are writing books on other books. That is, they are putting together information about historical facts through secondary sources. There are no, as far as I know, bestsellers of books based on primary sources mainly, because the work on primary sources is a long one, is a bit boring, let's say, and therefore this is how it goes. So what is interesting for me too is also that that thing, that artifact, that object of art, object as a book that stays on the shelves of a library is like fixing itself in reality and stays there, and it can stay there for a long time. But this doesn't mean that it's losing its capacity to make sense for others. So with books, this is very simple to see because, well, for example, when I made the research for the first work that I made, I went to find the main sources of information were two books published, one in 1903 and the other one in 1916. And apparently nobody was really caring of that topic after that dates. But for me they were precious, so I was constructing my own building on top of that bricks, of those bricks. And same thing could be for contemporary art or art in general. That is, we could also see it as some meaningful object that can stay mute, stay without voice for a while, but then start saying things again, according to different sensitivity, according to someone that is able to understand and share the thinking of the artist, and so on. Well, for sure, books have a big thing that is helpful, which is the library. Works of art, they are more weak in that because they can be forgotten more easily. So that you will have artists that are discovering new things that were discovered already 30 years ago. And maybe they even didn't know that, but still it's a bit upsetting to think, no, that things can be like that. So I like to see the work of art as a book in a way that is not very romantic one, that is not as a masterpiece, but more as a servant, that is something that can help, that can make the person that is the visitor, the person that is getting across the artwork as to develop his own ideas, to make his own associations, and to create his own work of art out of that work of art. So it's a concept that has been developed in the 20th century. It's not anything new. I mean, in my country there was Umberto Eco that was writing a lot of about this. That is the importance of the interpretation by the person that is let's say enjoying. I can't find the correct word in English, but I think you understood, no? The visitor, let's say. So what else these disciplines have in common? This process of selection, I think, is very important. This is very clear when you think about history, because history is made of selection. If you think to yourself as an historian, you will easily imagine that there will be something to leave and something to keep. No? You will have to make choices between facts, and some facts will be relevant for your research, some other won't be relevant. If your research is long enough, you will find out that maybe some fact that you thought it was not relevant became relevant after a while, but still is a matter of making decisions. And this is also happening very often with contemporary art. Overall, in the recent years, by the time artists started to work with things that are already done, which is not only, let's say, a mashup video, for example, but it's an approach, a general approach that is widespread, and it's also going out of the little artistic world and is influencing the way everyone is expressing himself through the social network. No, you can see how many, or YouTube, you can see how many parodies or other or remakes of things are done. And this is an approach that is a general one. And in contemporary art, there was the thinking of Nicolas Bourriaud, which developed this concept of post-production, no? That is making art with already made project or object of art. And also the further development is post-media, no? That is making this with objects that are media objects, digital objects, and so on. So, in short, I think you know already, but just to make it clear, if anyone doesn't know about this, Bourriaud thinks to the artist as an editor, no? You know, I don't know if you ever made a video, but if you made a video, you know how important is the editing process. And I know that there are some editors in cinema, for example, in production, that have a very wide sphere of action. That is, the director of the movie is really relying on the editor to make many choices. Well, that means, by my point of view, that the film is made by the editors more than from the director, because editing is a really important process. So the idea of Bourriaud is that the artist is like editing things. The editor makes what? Is working creatively with images already taken by the crew, no? While the director was on stage. So now we have an artist that is working with the work of other artists, of not artists, but anyway, images, and creating new meanings, create new things, even when they seem to be exactly the same, by changing the context and or some slight detail, the artist can create a new meaning to that object. No? So just imagine how you can change the meaning of an object of propaganda if you take it from that time when it was made and you put it in another time, that is the time of nowadays, for example, in another context. The context makes the difference. So it's a way to conceive the photography or audiovisual materials exactly as ready-made and nothing so new. So now I stop with this introduction, a bit more theoretical, but not so theoretical because I'm not a theoretician. So what I did was thinking to what I do, as I always do, but I decided from the beginning that I wanted to develop this doubt that I had about, or ideas that I had about the relation between history and art in some work, in some experience. Disguised myself as a historian, and I started making these works. I gave to this group of works a common title, that is this one, Futile Cycles. You see the explanation. The futile cycles is a process that takes place in biochemistry, and it's a kind of dissipation of energy, that is use of energy without apparent usefulness of it. So in my work there is a connection between historical research and the outputs that are more clearly artistic, but I consider both activities as a work of art. So the research that I made, that is the praxis, is part of the art, as if it is a very long performance, and the final result that is for history research mainly can be a book. So the book also is an artistic object, but is a scientific essay at the same time. So it's a book that can be taken by historians or any reader and conceived as a contribution to the history of that particular topic, but at the same time is an artist book. I'm going to explain you better in a while, but you will see that is a strange type of artist book. So the old cycles, the futile cycles, is made of 3 different projects, let's say, or works. All those works have their roots in the first half of the 19th century. I wanted to go a bit far, but the reason why I decided to stay on that period was by chance, in a way. But then, from the first work, as you will see, there was a connection to the second and to the third, so that's why they are all linked. But anyway, I wanted to go far away to feel that it was real history, no? What we usually conceive as history, but not so far to be completely lost in the past. So there is a central, there is a protagonist for all of these stories, but in the end, the protagonist is not so important. But anyway, the first protagonist is a marble sculptor. The second is a merchant, or was a merchant, and the third a writer. But this third work is still a baby. So the first cycle is dedicated to this Italian sculptor named Giuseppe Gaggini, quite famous at his time, and then has almost every neoclassic sculptor forgotten, because we only remember Canova, Thorvaldsen, and a few others, but Gaggini was studying with Thorvaldsen, and was a teacher, was the director of the School of Sculpture in the Academy of Genoa, and then in Turin. So it was quite famous, and it has a worldwide market for his works, and therefore he was committed to provide a fountain. In reality, two fountains, but let's make it simple. A fountain for Havana in Cuba. At the same time, he was trying to get, together with some other associated with him, trying to get the concession of a group of marble quarries in Piedmont. So those things were happening in 1836. This is the year. So the work that I made is a kind of I mean, I'm joining together the image and history of this marble quarry, which is high in the Alps, in a very high mountain, 2,100 meters is the quarry. And the image and history of this fountain in Havana. This is the fountain. It's named Fuente de la India, and it's a very important one. I mean, it's one of the most relevant monuments in this capital city. And this is a view from one side of the marble quarry. This is the side where they were throwing the broken marble down. That makes you understand how wild is this environment. So the work that I made was based on historical research, on documents. Then there was a session of photographies with my collaborator Piero Ottaviano. It's here, it's not me, because as you can see I have hair. So we are here in Havana to make the photographs of the fountain. In the marble quarries, marble quarry of Rocca Bianca, there is on the wall of the marble quarry there is the signature of Gaggini, and therefore you can see it here. This is a photograph of the video installation that I made in Genoa, which I chose because Gaggini was from Genoa, no? And and this is the point of maximum focus. Of maximum zoom in of these images, because these are images made of 360 degrees and then showed through 3 video projectors, and there is a zoom in and zoom out system and a transition between images that makes you go very close and then see all the landscape of both places. So yes, what I say already, panoramic images with sound, that makes the experience to be immersive, although the images are still. It's just photography. So you have this feeling of movement because of the zoom in, very slow zoom in and zoom out. And of course, the sound helps you to think that you are really in front of, let's say, reality. While, as I said, the photographs they are not video, they are photographs. Then I show you a bit of the work that was made to connect the three images to make sure that this long image that in the projection was 7 meters long can be of the best quality also when there is a zoom in. No? So the reason why there were 3 projectors was that I needed to have a very good quality of images also when there was a zoom in. So it was necessary to split the image on 3 different projectors. And this is the work that another person that worked in this project made, that is this blending of the images. These are all images made before the exhibition. Well, this is from the final result in the exhibition, and there is also a group of 3 images that shows the transition going on. Okay, so this is what was happening. So when I made this exhibition in Genoa, it was in 2015, and I didn't have written the book yet. So I made a kind of historical exhibition of images from the fountain, or of the marble quarry or surrounding area. But then in 2017 I published the book. The book is has a structure that is similar to the video installation. That is, I found out that I had this big problem of telling 2 stories that are parallel but have no much point of contact between them. So I decided to have this similar system of change between one image to the other and one story to the other. So the chapter of this book are one for the marble quarry, one for the fountain, and so on. And also, interesting enough, I think, there is an idea of zooming in and zooming out by telling stories that are really very, very connected to the topic or a bit more far from it. So this is the zoom out, of course. So there are these chapters, no? 6, because they are 3 for one, 3 for the other. And the 7th chapter is about, is a kind of alteration of this rhythm to talk about the family of this sculptor in Genoa in the 18th century. That is where, in a way, the entrepreneurial vocation of Gaggini started. Okay, this is the cover of the book. So it's, as you can see, it's really white on white. So, but you can imagine a bit the size of the book is a pocket and has no illustrations, no images. It's all written. has a section of references that is very big, almost big as the book, no, itself, that is the text. And then there is a final part of the book that is a conversation between me and a art historian or art critic, where the meaning of that is the artistic meaning of the book, that is one of the two possible meaning of the book, is explained. That is, through our conversation, the reader can understand that it is a history book, but it is also something else. And in fact, the publishing house has a section for artist books in his catalog, and the book was published there, although it looks like a very common book. The main differences with the, let's say, traditional artist books starts from the economical side, no? Because I think you perfectly know that artist book is made as an object for collectioners, so it has to be with a limited number of copy and with an important price. It's not made to be sold in bookshops. Is made to be sold by galleries, for example. So this is not the case of this book. This book has a normal price and was distributed as every other book. So now I go to the other work. Is it too boring? I hope no. Okay, the other work is Futile Cycles Boggiano. So what happened was that I came across, by researching on the fountain, I came across the name of two intermediaries between the committant in Cuba and the sculptor in Genova. That is, two merchants that were commercial intermediaries in this commission. And one of those was named Antonio Boggiano. Of course, these people were wealthy at their time, but completely forgotten after a while. So when I was researching on Gaggini, I decided to write also a bit of their biography, that is, starting from a name to tell the story of their life shortly, but at least to tell something. And I found interesting things. Also on the other one, that was named Gerolamo Rossi, but this one was really fascinating me because he was living in Cuba, and he had left in Cuba a very impressive print, no? A very impressive trace of his existence. So in short, the life of this Boggiano is that he was born in 1778. He went to Cuba in 1796. Settled in Trinidad, married, had children, then his wife died, and he returned to Italy in 1822. There he married again, had other children, and he was traveling a lot. In a way, it was also impressive that he was traveling also. In 1827, he went back to Cuba. He came back to Italy in 1830. And for the last time, he went to Cuba in 1842. And he stayed there until his death. So he died in Trinidad in 1860. 1 year before his death, he made this, that is, he had probably made in Italy a marble altar to the Virgin, dedicated to the Virgin for the main church of Trinidad. And the writing that you see on the left says that it was made by this Antonio Boggiano. So this is the only material trace, material relic of his existence in Cuba. But there is another type of relics, which is or immaterial heritage of Boggiano, which is his surname, because there were hundreds of, when I went to Cuba, I found out that there were hundreds of Cuban people named Boggiano, or as they say in Cuba, in every Spanish country, they will say Boggiano. So this Boggiano weren't the descendants of this man, because then I researching on his family, I found out that none of his son give birth. Only one of them give birth to babies, but he did it in Italy, and it's easy to find what happened of them. So all these Boggiano, alias Boggiano in Cuba, they are descendants of these slaves that he had. Some of them were house servants, but hundreds of them were in a coffee plantation that he had near Trinidad. So these are descendants of slaves. Then I started this research here. I am in the archive of the municipal archive in Trinidad. The lady on the left is the archivist that was helping me, because I also had to learn a bit of Spanish to make this work. And at the beginning it wasn't easy. And so one part of my work was made through the old books, manuscripts to reconstruct the biography of this Antonio Boggiano, and also of some trace of his slaves. The other part of the work was this one, that is speaking with people named Boggiano to reconstruct their family trees from the bottom, that is from what they knew about their family. So there were two vectors, two directions. One direction was from the nowadays people asking, what was the name of your grandmother? Do you remember when she died, and so on. And the other direction was from this type of books, which are, that is mainly this type of books, because in the municipal archive, that is the town archive of Trinidad, there wasn't so much information as in the parish books. So these are the parish books of Trinidad. And there you can read that they talk about a Boggiano, but yeah, a bit difficult to read, but when you get used to it, you can find a lot of information. Then the work is now, because at the beginning I didn't think to that. I'm going to explain you why. But now, at the final stage, the work is made by a wall installation made of two family trees. And in these family trees, you can find babies born in 2019, that is 3 years ago. But on the top, let's say, the apex of the family trees, there are people born in Africa. And with few steps, you come from the people, to babies born now, to the slave ships, let's say. Then there is a video. The video is doing something that I'm going to explain a bit later, but it's a very important part of the work. And then there is this book about Antonio Boggiano and and also the other Boggianos, of course, so the black Boggianos. Because between the black Boggianos, or black or not so black, no? Because as you know, Cuba is a country of mixing of different colors of skin. So you really can find a different situation. Nowadays you have people that are still living in the countryside as they were doing their ancestors almost 200 years ago. And there are university professors, including a scientist that has developed the vaccination for COVID and has been given a medal from the presidency of the Republic of Cuba because of this scientific work she made. So, non va più avanti? Ah no, sorry, it was... So these were the first attempt to create family trees. So when I was speaking with those people in Trinidad, you remember the image I showed you, no? When I was sitting together with two persons. I was working on this type of scheme of a family tree with the idea already to have a family tree that is not a conventional one. Usually family trees are made for generations, that is the grannies, then the parents, and then the son and daughters and so on. So all in one line. While I decided that I wanted to have a position on the vertical axis that was according to the date of birth, if I knew it, of course. And this has created a lot of movement in these family trees, so they became really like a tree, in a way, no? As if you see, every name is a leaf, and then there are these branches, but the movement is very, very accentuated. So with this type of, at this stage of work, I was invited to participate to this biennial in Morocco, which was the first edition of two with the same director, and the director told me that she was planning a in-progress biennial and was willing to have work that weren't concluded. And therefore I said, yeah, okay, this is perfect for my work, because my work is still to be, far from being concluded. So I had, this time I had already some photographs of some of the living Boggianos. This is one of them. And those scheme of family trees on my computer. So I decided to make of the photographs some oval images, because I wanted to play a bit with these traditional ways to represent the family, the bourgeois family or the aristocratic family, through family trees and portrait in oval. And also oval is very often used for mirrors, so it was also interesting for me, this idea of being mirrored by this Boggiano. And in Casablanca I showed these, that is a group of 6 portraits related to one little part, that is one little family tree that is connected with the other. So when I said, before I said 2 family trees, in one of those 2 there is a branch that is connected. It's not really a branch, it's like another family tree that is connected through a marriage in the middle of the 19th century. So this was the family tree that was almost completed at that time, and I showed that family tree and the portraits of people included in that family tree, and practically it was. There was a dima, adhesive paper dima, that was hanged on the wall, and then painting, spray painting on those adhesive, and then removing of the adhesive to get the family tree. Exactly the one that I had on my computer, but put on the wall. Sorry. And here is a detail that shows how are made the fruits, let's say, or the leaves of this family tree. So the information are the name, the family names, because usually there are 2 family names, as in Spain, and the dates of birth and death, if known. So this participation to the biennial in Casablanca was very important for me, because I understood that I had created a kind of cemetery of Boggiano, that is this combination of family tree and photographs was too stuck, too frozen, compared to the experience that I had by making my research at that point. That was an experience full of life, full of encounters, full of meetings with people and discoveries and so on. And therefore, I decided that I wanted to add a video. And that decision made me think that I had to integrate the portrait in the family tree, and also I was doubting about working so flatly, so in a way so flat with the family tree. So I decided to make the family tree 3D with frames, prototypes, and then I had a lab to make the resin casts. So there were molds and so on. So you can see here some image, and these are the people working on it, and the final result is this type of result, that is a system of frames with the portraits smaller than in Casablanca inserted on it, and very decorated and old style effect on that, which is not exactly my normal taste. I usually am not so decorative, but I thought that it was okay for this type of work. And here is also a proof made on the floor of how this could be hanged. That is the development in space of this. But this was the small one, the baby one of the trees. So I had to confront with the problem of managing a more complex situation, because what you see at the right of the red line, the vertical red line, is this. So I had to think about how to solve some other problem. But you see, it's rather impressive for me to see that all this development that you see under is one comes from one person. So and so this is the family tree at the moment. I still have to make some change because in my last trip, and this is going to be really the last because I did 5 trips and it was really pleasant but also demanding. I found some little variation to make, but this is almost complete. The family trees of, as you can see, there are 3 couple of slaves that were married, that is the owner wanted them or allowed them to be married, and then through marriages they are connected, no? So what you see is that there is one marriage of a daughter with a son and so on. But then the development until nowadays is just made by 1 and 2, 3. These are 3 people are creating what is in the bottom of this family tree. Yes, so these family trees are big. So this one is 4 meters tall and 14 meters long. There are lines where it can bend, it can make a corner. So it's not, I mean, you don't really need to have a 14 meter.
How many generations are there?
Sorry?
How many generations are in?
Well, I didn't count it because, but 7 generations should be enough to reach the Africans. But yeah, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to be from this, for example.
And the last one is or it's like in the last 20 years.
Sorry?
And the last generation, they were born in the last years.
Yeah, let's say that those generation up there on the right is a generation that ended the family name very long ago. Is this one? Okay. This one. So here there are 2 people. I mean, this one is I think is 80 years old. These 2 are around 70. He is 50, between 50 and 60, no? 50 and 60. And this is the youngest and was born in 1975, if I remember, or 78, if I remember well. So the youngest is already a mother, and her daughter is already, I think she's got her university degree recently. But almost all of them had children, but the children lost the family name, the Boggiano family name, because they were all, these are all, she's an aunt, but the others are all cousins, and they all have mothers with the family name Boggiano. So with one generation, they lost the family name. Yes, so the family trees are still in production. The book is still to be completed, but it has to be completed before. I mean, it has to be presented to the public in November this year. I have commitments that I cannot change for this, and the video is the only thing that is already made. I'm going to say something about this video to explain why it's so important for me. As I said at the beginning, when you talk about slavery, you have the history of slavery or social history of slavery. You have the problem of sources. There are no testimonies of what was the life of a slave, what were the feeling, the habits, and so on. I mean, you have always the point of view of the owners or of some visitor that were very often racist visitors interested in the things that were more picturesque or unable to understand what was going on and so on. When I said that documents can be deceiving, I was thinking as an example. No? I told you that I had an experience that showed me how this can be. Because one of the first documents that I found in Trinidad was an act of freedom, where a woman, 20 years old woman, very young, was buying her freedom, because in Spanish colonies there was this right for the slave to buy his own freedom, which sounds strange, I know, but it was really like that. That is, the slave couldn't be forced to work by the owner always. There were days of festivities, Christian festivities, where it was forbidden to work. But at the same time, in those days, the slave was free to make some little thing for himself, could make something as a craftsman, or could have, very often in the countryside, they had little pieces of land left to slaves so that they can cultivate their own food. And the slave owner was leaving land of no use, happy that his slaves were feeding themselves. He didn't have to feed them. But with these little pieces of land, they could also grow other things to sell. So, or in town, they were often rented. There were advertising on newspapers. I am renting a slave, and people were renting slaves to make some little works or big works, and then they could give a tip to them. That is, they were giving money to the owner because they were renting a thing, but at the same time, if they were happy with the slave, they could. And then there were other ways, less beautiful, let's say, to get money. That is, for example, prostitution. But anyway, in that way, they could collect money until the point to buy their own freedom. So this was what was doing this Maria de Jesus Boggiano, that I found in an act of 1822, that at the moment is the oldest one that I found as a freedom act. And she was saying, I mean, the notary was writing, okay, that Boggiano was selling this woman to, selling freedom to this woman, stating that she has no, I don't know how to say it in English, I'm afraid, hypothec, that is, you know, when you have a house and mortgage, bravo. So that Maria de Jesus has no mortgage, so it can't be free, as no other has right on her. And then I was a bit emotional, and I found that it was a bit moving to read that the notary was writing, and I, Maria de Jesus, I accept my beloved freedom and thank my owner, for the favor that is making me, not me. So in that moment, I had the feeling that for once in a while you could read the voice of a person, because it was a statement in first person, no? I, Maria de Jesus. But then, a couple of years after, I found exactly the same sentences in other acts of the same type, and therefore I understood that this was a cliché, that this was a way the notary was using always for this type of acts. So that wasn't the voice of Maria de Jesus, that was the voice of the notary, that is the voice of the system of operation that was selling a person his own freedom in this case, but still it wasn't Maria de Jesus speaking. So yeah, the problem then for me became that the upper part of the family, the lower part of the family trees, they are of people free, no? People therefore it will be easier to understand what I did or tried to make. I don't know if there are questions, other questions now or maybe later, but no questions.
I think maybe after the video.
Okay.